Well, many thanks for staying with us, and in case you're joining us, you're just in time for the big conversation here on KTN Prime. And of course, today being the 7th of July, 2026, 36 years since the initial Saba Saba demonstrations that were witnessed here in the country. Of course, at that time, they were agitating for many things, including political freedom and free expression. But not just matters politics, but also matters economy. They were calling for economic liberation. Now, 36 years later, we have another generation. That is why we talk about two generations, one struggle. The young generation is on the forefront of holding the government accountable, calling on the government of the day to ensure that all the issues that they are raising are addressed, their grievances, which again includes the issue of economic liberation 36 years later. But unfortunately, the young generation do say, as they agitate and call on the government to account, they've been mated with violence and government suppression. Now, we are seeking to understand whether we have made true progress 36 years later and what is at stake for the young generation, and can they indeed, of course, achieve what the veterans 36 years ago did not achieve. Before we have this conversation, I want us to listen to Senior Counsel and, of course, PLP party leader, Mother Karua, in regards to these Saba Saba commemorations.
We must safeguard the gains in the Constitution. We should never be stopped from expressing our rights, our views. So long as we do it peacefully, the government should never elect blockades like they have throughout the country today.
Pretty much. Of course, the issue of police excesses and the government trying so much to silence its critics continues to be a big concern, even as we talk about free expression and free speech. Now, joining me this particular evening to make sense of this particular conversation is to my immediate right, that is Dr. Kenneth Ombogi, who is a historian and governance expert. A very good evening to you, Dr. Many thanks for making time.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Pretty much. Thank you very much for, of course, joining us. Also joining us and next to Dr. Ombogi is Kaunda Frederick, who is a national youth leader. Mr. Frederick, very good evening to you.
Good evening. Asante sana. Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, also joining us this particular evening is Lena Mati, who is a lawyer and a political analyst. Wakili, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Now, last but not least is Dr. Njoki Wamai, an assistant professor in politics and international studies. A very good evening to you, Dr.
Good evening.
Of course, welcome to this particular broadcast. Now, let me begin with you, Dr. Ombogi. 36 years later, I know for the young generation, I included, we were not there. It happened years before we were born. But if you look at what happened then to today, 36 years, the grievances that took the people to the street at that particular time, a particular moment in time, are we enjoying the gains of all the grievances that were raised at that particular time, or are we still having issues with some of the concerns they raised at that particular time? In short, have we made progress?
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for that excellent question, I should say. The advantage I have is that I was there in 1990. I was actually a second-year student in the University of Nairobi at the time. That means that I was a GNC, if we can apply that concept retrospectively.
At that time, yes.
At that time. And we witnessed the events of actually 7th July, 1990, marked by this symbolic, I think it was a pickup mounted with loudspeakers, with Orengo, Shikuku, and many others, driving to the famous space called Kamkunchi. Now, back to your question much more directly, have we made progress? In a number of ways, there is some progress that was made out of the struggles of 1990. This progress, and you could clearly see it up to very recently, that comparatively when you look at Kenya, we have a much more open society. We have a much more free media, and we have a much more political space than many other countries in the continent. It is out of the agitation of the 90s, of course, traced back to Saba Saba and even before, that the new Kenyan constitution, I don't think whether it is new anymore, was born. We have had successful, multi-party elections since that time. In 1990, Kenya was a one-party state. Things were not the way they are now. I can mention the names of many people within and without government today, and I'll be sure that I will sleep in my house. In 1990, when we were undergraduate students, there are names we couldn't mention. And if you did, you were sure you are not going to go back to Hall 11 in the University of Nairobi main campus where I slept. There has been change. But the issues we are talking about now is that if Saba Saba in 1990 was a chapter of Kenya's political story, it was the first chapter. There is a lot that needs to be accomplished. The unfortunate thing that we have had recently is actually the shrinking of the same political space that I was talking about. And the unfortunate thing is that this is taking an East African dimension. That when you look at Kenya, we are still, complaining of a situation where there is forced disappearances of human rights activists. Police brutality seems to have, found its way back, despite the many changes that have come to our police service as a result of the 2010 Constitution. The freedom of assembly seems to be still getting limited by the day. You go to Uganda, the old man of the patriarch of East African politics seems to be determined to cling to power. And there are issues of human rights abuses, arbitrary arrest of political dissenters and many others. Down in Tanzania, we thought that having a mother in a president will make a difference, but at least we realized that we were in for a great shock, that Mama Suluhu has turned out to be much more dictatorial than probably some of the presidents that Tanzania has. And I think that is the concern the young people have. That concern goes beyond the political liberation, but they are talking about economic justice, freedom from corruption, and many other ills that seem to affect the Kenyan society. Yes, the efforts of the 1990s achieved something, but there is a lot that remained undone as we speak.
Pretty much. Kaunda, if I may come to you,
yes.
He has talked about, gains that were made, but
yes.
Of course he has also highlighted the concerns that we continue to face currently. The issues of arbitrary arrests, the issues of abductions, the issue of, silencing critics, more so from the state using, very brutal means. From where you sit, we've, of course, just like me, you're young, we've witnessed several regimes.
Yes, yes.
From where you sit, do you believe there's a clawback in terms of the gains that we had made since that particular demonstrations with the current regime specifically?
Thank you, Kitani, for that. From my seat, I think, first of all, it's very good for us. It's important for us to appreciate what our forefathers have fought for us. We can't just discontinue what they have done, because if you check closely, the Kenya at that time is not the Kenya today. whereby at that time even having such a panel discussion wasn't free and wasn't met at easily. So therefore, I think for us as young people, I think for us we are complaining matters unemployment. We are complaining matters our voices are not heard. But still, it's important for us to understand that our country needs to be in order for us to move forward. And for us to move forward, we need to be able to continue voicing out what we need to voice out for the generation to come.
Okay, pretty much. Okay, looking at legal matters, one of the concerns that we have today, and I'm asking this because specifically, in terms of your legal or law background, the concerns that several, the judiciary, the legislature, they're all captured. Looking at the judiciary as it stands today, is it free from political intimidation? Because if then that is the case, then we still have a very long way to go. Is the government of the day and even previous governments somewhat intimidating and preventing the judiciary that we have from undertaking its mandate independently? Because that is one of the things that also led to the protest back then.
Thank you so much, Keitani. I think it's good to first highlight that the fruits of democracy that we enjoy today is as a result of what happened in 1990. That when they went out to fight for multipartyism and the problems that they encountered, because once we are making our constitution, we looked at the historical problems that we've had before. Mm-hmm. That was one of the guiding things while we were making our constitution. And when we made our constitution, it increased our spectrum of rights. That is political rights, social rights, and economic rights. We are able to go to the streets today because we have been given political rights. Essentially, what was there in our independence constitution was that there was so much power that was vested within the executive. But when the authors of the constitution and the Kenyan people sat down and say that, you know what, it is so hard or it is so bad to invest power in one person because there is the possibility of misuse of that power. So what they did is that they diversified power to go to different areas. Actually, the first branch of government, I don't think it's executive or legislature or judiciary. I think it is the people. Because Article 1 says that sovereign power belongs to the people. And then now some power was given to the executive, another one was given to parliament, another one was given to judiciary to be able to check each other. There was no one particular branch of government that was given all the power. And this was to ensure that they can be able to check each other. When we went to the streets, actually in 2024, when the young people went to the streets in 2024, when I was coming here, I was wondering, what is the difference between one-party state and partyless? Are we, the gains that we made during 1990, are we capitalizing on them? Because if the young people can go out to the streets and say that you don't want to be members of the party, and yet there were people that went out in 1990 to fight for multipartyism, then where have we gotten? So while I appreciate the gains that were made, I also believe that reforms is a progressive thing. It's not a destination that you reach. Because every year there will be something that we are fighting for. In 2015 we were fighting, in 2018 we were fighting, 2024 we are fighting, today we are still fighting. The generation that is coming ahead of us will also be fighting. So reforms is something that we keep fighting for. When it comes to the judiciary and the interference of the executive, the functions of the judiciary have been highlighted in the Constitution. The functions of the executive have also been highlighted in the Constitution. There is a way to safeguard the same. One of the things that I've actually seen this year and even the previous 2 years is that the judiciary has tried to steer away from anything that looks like it's interfering with the work of the executive or the parliament. It has stuck to its mandate. And while some of the decisions may not make sense, because you see, law is compromise. Law is actually compromise. Law is not something that we all understand. And that's why we always say that our constitution has been reached out as part of compromise. Why? Because there are some things that even the authors themselves, when they sat down and say that we're going to write these, up to date we still don't know the intention. But once we go to court, we are able to tell the court that, we don't understand this. Please help us in getting the interpretation of this. The interpretation of the same may not sit well with everyone. Some people will always be opposed to it, and that's normal. It's how our democracy works. If you have any problems or you would want to challenge any decision of the court, it's imperative that you go either to the Court of Appeal or to the Supreme Court if you are dissatisfied. But it's so hard to say that the court has been interfering with the executive has been interfering with the government. When I look at the Social Health Authority, when it was introduced, people went to court and said, you know what, public participation has not been carried out. And because it has not been carried out, according to the Public Finance Act, Finance Chapter, it demands that anything that involves public funds has to be subjected to transparency, it has to be subjected to public accountability, it has to be subjected to, transparency. So because public participation has not been carried out, we cannot be able to roll out SHA. So what did the government do? It went and followed the right channel for them to be able to establish a legislation that involved the Social Health Authority. That was the right decision by the court. Just that now the court guided the parliament in doing their work. So I don't believe that there has been excessive interference by the executive on the judiciary.
Before I engage Dr. Omai, you've talked about excessive interference, but there's another aspect into it, the issue of the disregard of court orders by the current regime.
Okay.
I don't know if you can kindly speak to that, because it is something that has also raised concern among millions of Kenyans out there.
Of course, disregard of court orders is contempt of the court. And any person that disregards court orders, it's a crime in the context of the law. And so the same cannot be applied. We cannot take the responsibility of one person and impose it on the whole state agency or the whole government. Every person will, because once we talk about contempt, they don't say that the Ministry of Health has disregarded court orders. They say the particular person has disregarded court orders. That is a personal responsibility. It's not a responsibility of an entire state or an entire ministry. Yes.
Dr. Mai, let me engage you. When you talk about, matters executive overreach, there's been concern in regards to that. I don't know whether you hold the same opinion that, Wakili holds, that there's been, no such or much overreach in terms of the executive trying to intimidate the judiciary. But if you look at even the issue of, disregarding or defying court orders, from your set, or from where you stand, are we sliding back to 1990, pre-1990?
Thank you. I think first I want us to go back to actually from 1963, because we have a problem. We keep thinking that Kenya is a democracy in the real sense of a liberal democracy. So I would say Kenya has been very unlucky, Since 1963, we have never really found a president who can give Kenyans a liberal democracy in the full definition of what a liberal democracy means. So what we have is more what I would call electoral democracies. And if we're going to be even more critical, it is electoral authoritarianism. That's where we are sliding to right now. And if even the listeners can know that there are three different types of political systems. The very low tier is totalitarianism, where the state takes over and does everything, including thinking for you, like what we have in countries like North Korea. And then we have authoritarianism, and that's where many countries, it is like, that is where many countries try to slide to, and that's why there are all these people who are fighting back, because that's where we are sliding to. It's also very low tier. Of course, there's a lot of debate about authoritarians versus, and then the highest form of political system is a democracy. Of course, it's highly debated. Some people may say, democracy is a liberal idea, is Western and all those things. But I think despite all the challenges of a democracy, it is still the best form of political system, because it guarantees certain minimum like freedoms, you know. And so the challenge we have is we have never, yes, people keep saying Kibaki, he tried, but there were still issues of arrest, arbitrary arrest even during Kibaki's time, you know, less extrajudicial killings compared to what we have now. And I think as scholars we need to do the research to actually show the extrajudicial killings that have happened within the Ruto regime probably can only be compared to the Moi regime. And also in there, of course, there was a lot of human rights violations within the Kenyatta regime, Kenyatta 1, of course, Jomo, and Kenyatta 2. So we've been, probably the time where we were given a bit of reprieve was Kibaki's time, and even then, it is not what Kenyans have never been given, sadly, that opportunity to really enjoy what is a liberal democracy. So we have this, what I call a mongrel democracy, you know, that it really never takes off. And sadly, as you're saying, that's where we have all these things going on, overreach of the executive that doesn't respect. Because one of the tenets of a liberal democracy is rule of law and respect for those three institutions and the independence of those institutions. Okay. Parliament, judiciary, and the executive. We have a parliament that, as you know, what happened. People say
it is captured.
It is a captured, bought parliament. So we cannot rely on that parliament. You saw what happened in the 2024 Gen Z. They were fighting, and the parliament was captured. We have, of course, a judiciary that sometimes supports the people, does the right thing, and sometimes also really lets down the people. So I feel sad for us Kenyans, but that's why we are here, again, celebrating, not really celebrating, taking stock, 36 years. And I'm saying even beyond, before 1990, 1982, we can even go all the way to 1963. But remember in 1982, what happened after the coup, all our rights were taken away. And that is when in 1982, Section 2A was introduced to make Kenya a one-party state. Okay. Exactly.
Before I talk to Dr. Ari here, briefly, let me just ask one more question, Dr. Ari. I mean, in 1990, even during that particular protest, the government was brutal, really brutal on the protesters then. And even as we speak today, 36 years later, we're still seeing or witnessing the use of excessive force, from shooting to arbitrary arrests. From where you sit, why do you think the government's playbook in terms of handling dissent remains unchanged 36 years later?
I think it's having the wrong leaders, and leaders who don't understand what is a democracy. Leaders who don't understand that you are there to serve the people. Don't capture. I think they don't think about I'm here to serve the people. They have a different thinking of why they got into power. Is either to amass resources, and when you have that kind of mindset, you're there, of course, to protect yourself. And then you have a police force that has never changed its colonial thinking. Remember, the Kenyan police force is very problematic because it was set, its history is based as a colonial police force from was it the King's African Rifles? So a colonial police force that was meant to protect an elite, not the people. And they have never changed that mindset. Even if they change the uniform 101 times.
They even said when they change the name from police force to police service, things will change.
Even when they change from a police force to now they call themselves Utumishi kwa Wote, they do not serve the people. Their service is to the elites and to protect the ruling regime in power. And so if we have a president who also doesn't think about his role as a servant leader, then he uses the same police force as that colonial police force that used to protect they used to protect the colonial regime from the people. So now they're busy protecting the elites from the people. We keep saying, like today, if you Google anywhere in France, in Europe, France especially, they have protests every day, manifestation, they call them. But how many times have you heard about deaths? People being shot for protesting. protest is a form of political participation that is enshrined in our Kenyan Constitution, Article 36, but constantly violated. And that protest is part of what is a democracy, you know? So I'll stop at that.
Thank you, Marsh. Article 37, yes?
Yes.
Maybe let me weigh in. You see, the very interesting thing that has not happened in our motherland is the evolution from political liberation to the development of a political democratic culture that can support some of the reforms stipulated in our constitution and the laws of the land. And the reason why this has happened that way, and I wish that young people appreciate.
Just a moment, Dr. Apologies. I'm being told your mic has an issue. They're coming to sort it in just a moment. Oh. But Kaunda, let me ask, even as Dr. was, responding to the questions.
Yes.
Can we really say we are celebrating democratic milestones when we are seeing a systematic way of what one would say is criminalizing peaceful assembly and picketing?
From where we sit as the young people, we feel that we need to be listened to, and the reason as why we are seated today, and we actually advocate for young people to take their voter registration, because the only way we could save this country is by saving it through the ballot. We also have to consider that as much as all these things are happening, our country doesn't need to go into violence in the name of we need our things to be sorted out as young people. Mm-hmm. But for us as the youth of this country, the only way we can save ourselves is by choosing right leaders to lead us. But now the question goes to which kind of a future do we want as the young people of this country? From where we sit, I think the future that we'd be very proud to see our children enjoying is the future whereby that if any country wants to recommend any skill set, they think about Kenya. So when you go to the streets, when we advocate all these things, what do you want to achieve at the end of the day? But at the end of the day, we still say that the current leadership has a lot to work on. It matters peaceful assemblies and following our constitution. Yes.
The young people talk about, the need for change in the country.
Yes.
And they've tried the route of demonstrating and picketing as, of course, enshrined and well articulated in the Constitution. Yes. But again, one would argue that the biggest demonstration would be on the ballot come 2027, and the young people coming out to vote. But if you look at even the by-elections that have been held, the number of young people who have come out to vote is, a bit low. How crucial is that? Or how crucial will be the fact that they need to come out to vote in 2027 to ensure that they can also have these issues addressed? Because like you've rightly put it, it can only be addressed when we have the right leaders in place. And if we have the right leaders, we can only have the right leaders in place for that matter if we go to the ballot and elect those leaders.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you see, the matter of by-election, this is something that I call to my young people each and every day, that as much as we do this digital sensitizations, we should also be sensitive in doing the practical work in the ground. It's very unfortunate that we have like 14 million of the young people who are not even actively participating in elections. Actually, the recent IBC registration, we registered only half of it. So where are the rest? So as young people, we continue to urge them, please take that voter's card and also be part and parcel of this process, because this is your land. Our parents did their share, and it's also our duty for us to also fight for the liberation of our children. As Dr. Ria said, he was part and parcel of it during his time as a young person. Also for us as young persons of the day, we should also be part and parcel of the process.
Fair enough. Wakili, you're part of the young generation, and of course, you, Kaunda, and I are included in that particular bracket. Even as we talk about, making the changes that we need on the ballot, how crucial is it that we need to confront this issue of, use of excessive force? How can we end this vice? Because as we speak today, we're not only talking about the use of excessive force by the police, we're also seeing a trend whereby we're seeing goons taking over the place. And the government of the day is seemingly having quite a problem in handling these menace, because we've been talking about it for months now, and we are heading into the next general election. How crucial is it that we need to handle and tackle this issue once and for all? And if not, then we're staring at, going back or throwing the country into anarchy if, what political commentators do say is anything to go by.
Okay, first, before I address your issue to do with police reforms, I find while my brother here has given some very good remarks to do with change and the ballot and all that, I find the term "we need change and good leaders" to be so cliche nowadays. And it's cliche because we use it, but you're not intentional about it. Intentionality demands that we know where the problem is. First, we investigate, we diagnose where the problem is, and then we come up with a solution of dealing with the same. The idea of change has been hanging around Kenya, I think, for a while now, almost like 2 years now. But when I look at the strides that you are making, we do not understand. And I think it's the reason why the young people are still moving back to the old way of doing things. Because I've seen, I don't want to mention a name, but there were a group of young people that were very aggressive on the issues to do with change, even calling for accountability and all those kind of things. But they got somewhere and said, I think I cannot do this. And then they went back to the old way of doing things and even started now, like they got themselves attached to the old system and the old way of doing things. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them because the kind of whatever change cannot exist in a vacuum. Change has to have something that grounds it. So when you talk about change, here, media, what is media doing about change? Because we still have some issues to do with media. You as a student, what are you doing about that change? Education, what is education doing about that change?
Allow me to interject. When you say, when you talk about the media, there's a lot that we need to do so that we can talk about change. What exactly are you referring to? Because even as you speak today, even, the media is under attack. So what exactly are you talking about when you say we need to do more in terms of getting the change that we need to get, or we're talking about?
I can tell you for a fact, Kitani, that nowadays it's so hard for me to get the right facts. It has become, actually I'm very careful with my consumption of information. So nowadays, not just mainstream media, but even social media, I think we have so many platforms right now that are trying to push something that doesn't exist. So one of the things that I always do, once I get a media update, is I go first to check it. I believe strongly that one of the things that must be there before anyone makes a decision at the ballot is that there ought to be civic awareness. If there is no civic awareness, people cannot make the right decisions. If you're coming from a point of distorted information, misinformation, or lack of information, people will never make the right decision. And I believe that the media has freedom. It's guaranteed freedom. I think, is it Article 40 of the Constitution, or is it, I'm not very sure, of the Constitution. The media has every right to broadcast as they want, but there should never be political or commercial interest. And the media is also protected by the Constitution. If the media feels aggrieved in any way, they have the right to take remedy. I believe the media even has what we call, you have remedies before you even go to court. There are remedies that the media can be able to take to be able to address any issues that they have. But also I feel like we have opened a can of disinformation such that it has become very hard for the people to get the right information and the facts.
Can you point to one particular issue that you're talking about when you say, some sort of disinformation? Because as far as I'm concerned, and I'll speak for Standard Media Group, for example, we remain committed to factual reporting and no form of distorted information in any way gets out of this particular media. So I'm struggling to understand when I say there's some sort of disinformation coming from the media. What can you point to an instance to be specific?
Okay, I think, Kitana, you're trying to turn this around. Because my idea is not to attack the media per se. My idea is to say that in the society, most of the institutions that we have are failed. Even education, like we saw what happened yesterday. Teachers and students throwing stones at each other. Where have we seen that before? It's something, it's so new to us. We have never seen. And you see, the education or the schools have the responsibility of shaping our students. So if they don't get the right citizens from, schools, where are we going to get them from?
Okay.
You want to interject me?
No.
Okay.
You continue.
So my flow of thought is this. Everyone has the responsibility. Developing this country and making this country is a dual responsibility. While the state is the biggest duty bearer, you and me and every other person out there must play their responsibility to ensure that we get what we want. Because if we don't lay the foundation, we'll keep saying that, we want actors. But if the culture, the same culture remains the same, these actors will be changed by that culture. It's not even about the leaders themselves. It's also about creating an environment where the good leaders can be able to thrive. Yes.
Pretty much. Dr. Ray, let me now, apologies, let me give you a time to respond.
I hope now you can hear me. We live in a country where there is a general deficit of trust in everything that we do. I hope somebody was not trying to control me, but I'm back. As I listen to my friends talk, I'm developing this strong feeling that if I had a chance, I'll make the reading of history compulsory from kindergarten to first degree in university. I read and teach history in the University of Nairobi, and that is something I'm increasingly appreciating, especially when is it Lena?
Yes.
When Lena is talking about what happened in Nyabisase Secondary School yesterday as something new, I'll tell you there's nothing new in that. There has been fights of that kind, even worse. There was one, I think, where it was now even a reverse between villagers and students in a school. The panoramic framework here is we live in a country where we have had perpetual struggle for liberation at different levels of our society, whether it is in school, whether it is in university. I'm sure you've had the history of the struggles of my own University of Nairobi over the years for the political space in the country, and it has gone on to produce political leaders who keep on fighting. So the point I'm making, Leah, is that struggle has been the password of our history throughout, manifested in different ways, both violent and non-violent. What you witnessed yesterday was actually a violent one between young kids and their teachers. That was common, particularly in the 80s, late 80s, when we were in high school. My school was, I don't want to mention the name of my school, but we witnessed something akin to that. Imagine between students and villagers. What will be worse? You're fighting your own parents. But the point that children are making, and I wish we are sympathetic to them, that there is something that is not happening in that school. Somebody is not talking to them. Somebody is not listening to them. But back to my point, ours, politically speaking, is actually an unfinished project as a nation. The reason why it is unfinished is one, is that we have actually concentrated more on political liberation over the years, and we have been slow in transiting from mere political liberation to creating a political culture that works for us. I'm not an enemy of a Kenyan policeman, and I have many relatives who are police officers, including my own students who are police officers currently. We are not enemies. But the issue is we have not created a political culture that embodies democracy so that we are able to, even when we disagree, we will agree to disagree. That's number one. Number two, we have mistaken regular elections for democracy, and Dr. Wamai raised that. That we have had elections since, 63, the independence elections up to now, and people confuse that. Mm-hmm. Elections are important, but if they are not accompanied with a creation of proportionate institutions to support the products of those elections, then they end up in a situation that we have today. The question is, why have we remained the way we are, and such that the more things change, the more they seem to remain the same? It goes back to the 1960s, and I have an advantage of being a historian, and if you allow me, I will briefly highlight this. What many of us, even around this table, call independence, there was actually not independence. There was a transition of power from one group of elite to another group of elite, and the difference between the two was actually skin color. Because one was white, one group was white during the colonial era, the other one was black. Nothing much changed. So we have taught our history to reflect an independence that was never there. The transition of power is what we call independence. And then our first president, Mzee Kenyatta, we give him credit. He was an old man in a young country. An old man who had seen it all, lived in Europe, gone through all sorts of frustrations that you could go through, the racial discrimination and all that. Kenyatta had no problem with colonialists. The problem he had is the exclusion of the Africans from the structures of the state.
Elite Africans.
Elite Africans. Thank you, Njoki. And when they got in there, he actually did not change much. He continued with the structures of colonialism, so that Kenya's immediate post-colony was more or less actually the continuation of the colonial state that we had. She mentioned about the police. The police in colonial Kenya protected the state, not the ordinary lesser mortals, everyday Kenyans. Okay. Police in post-colonial Kenya protect the state. That's why my own brother, who is in a police force, my own sister, who carry a rungu and hit me, just because I'm saying something must happen within government. Somebody caricatured this situation yesterday, saying, even if we start demonstrating for the rights of the police for good remuneration, they will actually fight against us. You get that? Okay. You only need to read the political history of this country to actually appreciate where they are coming from.
How big of an
let me move on, Kidogo. Okay. Just a bit of history. We will make it history 101 today. Kenyatta, one comes in and maintains literally the status quo. It was working for them. The independence elites. They get into European farms. They inherit their land, and they become a new aristocratic class. We are writing a book with a colleague on ethnic aristocracy in Kenya. It's coming out just soon. Then he actually did not want to wreck the boat. Most of the structures we inherited in colonialism remained. A quick way forward, succeeded by President Moi, a man who was very vulnerable in all senses of that word, politically speaking. And this vulnerability is marked by the 1982 coup, which transforms a very benevolent leader who took power in 1978, very weak and very vulnerable, to what then was called the Kiambu Mafia, who had the powers on their hands. 1982 changed him completely.
Okay.
From being a benevolent leader to, a good dictator.
A proper authoritarian.
And it is out of that situation that we have the struggle for what now the 1990s they call the second liberation, that could emerge as Saba Saba today.
Okay.
You get that? Now, way forward, we struggle. We get President Kibaki with all his Keynesian economics, and the changes he brought in. Kibaki played Kenyatta. He actually wanted to replicate the Kenyatta state. Sit back, an old man, remove yourself from the center of things, let your ministers do stuff, and let them carry their cross once they are caught. It was not that there was no corruption during Kibaki's time. Anglo-Lism came in, and many others, Now, President Uhuru comes in, Kenyatta II, as we call him. It was a mixture of all the three, a bit of his father, a bit of Moi, because Moi is the one who made him, and a bit of Kibaki. We had what Njoki called a mongrel, in fact, a real one, during the Kenyatta II era.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we have President Ruto, who, in some sense, is trying to replicate the Moi state, where the center of things is the president. But now the problem is that he's doing it at the wrong time.
2010 Constitution.
There is a 2010 Constitution that we didn't have. We are officially an open society. And that is the struggles that the young people are finding themselves. And it will take a very clear understanding of this political history of the country to be able to appreciate that if the young people need to do something that will transform this society, we need to go just beyond, one, elections, just go beyond liberation in the streets, and create something that will truly transform this country into democratic institutions where everybody appreciates that I may not agree with you, but I will defend your right to hold that position with my blood, if I may paraphrase the French thinker who said that. That is, in my view, our unfinished business. To transform liberation, transform the slogans that we have into functional institutions, into a political culture that upholds democracy and the democratic principles that are supposed to define our situation today.
Pretty much. Dr. Njoki is alluding to the situation. He's painted a clear picture. At some point, I felt like I was in a history class, and I appreciate it, Dr. Ari. He's painted a picture of what we have right now and the current regime and what the president is trying to do. But how big of an impediment is that in strides or efforts to ensure that we achieve the liberation that we talk about as a country?
How big is the what?
How big of it, whatever the president is trying to do in, using the antics that were used back then, how detrimental, how big of an impediment is it to ensuring that we get the liberation that started 36 years ago? We fully achieve it.
No, it's very detrimental, because as we are saying, you cannot use, the current regime is using Moi tactics, and in Moi's time we were proper electoral authoritarianism, An authoritarian government, which I said is quite low tier, you don't, especially political rights and Bill of Rights are usually suppressed. Many of them will do very good on economic rights or economic goods, or but they do very badly on political rights. But the two go together.
Okay.
Because the minute you call yourself a democracy, those are the tenets of a democracy. Liberty, freedom, so allowing people to have the freedom, whether it's freedom for freedom of thought, all those freedoms we have outlined in our chapter 5 of the Kenyan Constitution. Freedom of assembly, freedom of movement. You cannot wake up like the police woke up today and put barricades on roads. That is actually contravening our constitution. And I hope some lawyers are going to the constitutional court to deal with that, because you cannot restrict people's movements, you know. But what it seems is the current regime is in such fear. And of course, they create all these narratives. Oh, there are people who are going to destroy the property. How come we have so many protests? If you actually think about it, there are so many protests that happen. When the Arsenal fans were busy on the streets, did they destroy any property? So there's a correlation between the state's fear or state insecurity. When women protest on feminist side, and we do that often, do you hear of violence or you know? So, but there's a correlation between when there's violence, because the police are the ones who actively provoke the protesters when you have a protest to do with something that the state is insecure about. When the state is being held account by the citizens, which is its right, it's the right of the citizens. Remember, we are in a social contract. The power belongs to the people. And that's what the word democracy means. Demos kratos. Mob rule. It is the people who rule. This is not an autocracy. So as long as the mob rule, the people rule, they have only lent you that power for a very short time. Those 5 years, you know. And I hope as we think about also working on our constitution and revising some ways, we can also have a way where we can have a way to impeach our presidents or our members of parliament, governors. Governors, there's a procedure of impeachment, but an easier process. Because you have seen, we have very serious challenges.
Okay.
You know, so we have a problem, as I said, of a regime that does not want to be held to account, because protests happen. Otherwise, that day of Arsenal fans celebrating, how come no police came out? Okay. When the women are protesting against femicide, no police comes to throw anything to them. When Matatu people decide to protest against, I don't know, we don't see that. But when young people come, so these are your children, and that should be good. The elites that are currently in power, the Gen Z here, me, I'm an old millennial, so it's good we have very many different generations. How come, what is this fear you have? How do you fear your children? As a good father or a good mother in Tanzania, they should be sitting and listening the way you do in a family. You listen to the problems and deal with them. Yeah.
No, I'll come to you, Dr.
Yes.
Allow me to engage, because we said we have different generations. Allow me to engage. Let me start with you, Akili. As a young person today, and you've talked about how you feel about when you say we need change. But looking back, as a young person today, looking back at the Saba Saba, movement or demonstration, do you believe it, did indeed break the culture of what one would say impunity and patronage, or did it, just change faces?
Wow. As I said, it's not possible for us to be able to deal with everything at once. Reform is something that is very progressive, and reform takes different shape. Just because we've gone to the streets to demonstrate, it doesn't mean that we will get to the goal. Just because we have sat somewhere here to have a conversation, it doesn't mean that we've also been able to achieve whatever it is that we wanted. It takes a lot of things for reforms to be successful. When I look at the 1990 moment, it helped us in the aspect that it gave birth to multipartyism. And multipartyism is very vital. Right now, one of the ways that we can be able to participate as citizens in the development and democracy of our country is through the political parties. One-party state means that it's a one-sided way of operation. It's only the government that is participating and its citizens. So the majority of the people don't get to exercise their right. The 1990 moment is the one that actually also led to 202 moment. Because now with a different political vehicle, people gathered together and they were able to have a change in government. All those things are the ones that have brought us here. Right now we can talk about a participatory democracy because we were capable of achieving the foundation. Today, that foundation is what we as the young people are lacking, and we are now scattering back to the old system. It's also imperative to note that while at least one mode of achieving things is good, one mode of expression is good, like going to the streets and picketing and presenting our petitions to the relevant organization, that's a good way. But it is not the only way that we need to use. We need to sit down as the young people and ask ourselves, when it comes to our political parties, because someone put somewhere for our political parties to exist today, those political parties, are they doing what they are mandated to do? Up to date, as young people, we are still not included in the core decision-making parties of the decision-making tables of the party. Up to date, women are still struggling with the 2/3 gender rule, something that can be implemented by political parties. Up to date, parties are still cocooned themselves under kingpins. It's not possible for us to be able to achieve what we want if we don't have political parties reformed. Part of the fight that we need to take as the young people is ensuring that political parties are effective mechanisms. Because today, if political parties were capable of doing what they are meant to do, as young people, we don't even need to be picketing and going to the streets every time. We can just be saying, us as the young people of this and this party, these are our grievances, because we have members in parliament, you guys need to be able to deal with this. We talk about parliament not following what, or not doing what they were chosen or elected to do. But if the political parties were working effectively, we don't even need to be shouting out there and going to the media and talking about parliament. We can just say, let's call our members of parliament. Let's ask them, why haven't you done this and this? Why did you pass this bill? Why has public participation not been embedded in this and this activity that you did as parliament? That is part of the struggle that we are still facing. It did not, while 1990 brought something, but the struggle still needs to continue.
You've highlighted one very important fact. For example, the issue of the 2/3 gender rule. All that you've talked about are things that can be done. Is it that there are obstacles in accomplishing these things, or can one just say this is, totally ignorance? Because, for example, the issue of the 2/3 gender rule, it is an issue that was subject to conversation, even during the campaign period, but that has not been fulfilled, and the court pronounced itself on the matter last week. We're waiting to see how the government will, take that. Is it just that we don't care, the people in positions to do this don't care, and they know nothing will happen? What is the biggest impediment to ensuring that all these things that we're talking about, all that you've highlighted, the 2/3 gender issue, is fully implemented?
You see, when we came up with our constitution in 2010, our constitution set the minimum threshold for gender balance by actually establishing the women rep positions and calling for nomination of women in both in the Senate and in the parliament and within the county. The rest of the work, because you see, the constitution cannot do everything. It cannot say that as a people, you need to elect this number of women. It will be taking the very power it has given to the people and taking it itself, And you see, also the constitution is not self-executing. The constitution needs someone to be able to execute it. So the first people that were supposed to pick up from where the constitution left was actually the political parties. But now, because since 2013, the Mutula Kilonzo bill that came into play, the Chepkonga bill, a lot of bills have been introduced in parliament to push for the 2/3 gender bill, but the same have never been successful. There have been too many measures that have been called, affirmative measures, political parties being told to do this and this. But the same has failed because actually there's no political goodwill from within the political parties. If today the political parties were very serious and they were very keen on ensuring that we have more women, then the political parties, there's something that they need to do. They ought to they ought to come up with reforms that ensures that the women at the nomination stage, the women can be able to profit from nomination tickets, just like the rest of the people. But now it's even becoming worse because I've seen a particular wave, let me call it wave, of politicians that is now demanding, that is now saying that we stand for the young people and we stand for change. And I think in a group of 20 people, there was only one woman. Then I asked myself, what is this change that you're purporting to bring if you have only one woman?
And even that one woman is being attacked everywhere. She's been told that she doesn't fit to be in that particular group that is making the decisions.
Okay.
I think we have a long way to go. But also we have to look at the kind of society that we have. It's very patriarchal. It doesn't believe that women fit the bill to be in the political spaces.
But do you agree that we do believe women do have that liberty, because we have a couple of you inside this particular...
Do you believe yourself?
Yeah, I do. But let me come to Kaunda. Kaunda, when you talk about liberation, we are talking about just political liberation. You're forgetting the economic aspect of it. Today, Kenyans, or for example, 2 years ago, Kenyans on the street, the young generation on the street in regards to the issue of, high taxation, the issue of, the economy not, doing really well, and Kenyans, struggling out there. Can we really say that the, citizens are free if they have the right to, vote, for example, but they lack the means to survive?
Thank you, my brother. First of all, to continue from where my colleague has said, it's important for us to understand, even as men, when we empower women, our country grows. Look at how USA boosted the economy immediately after COVID. They put women in these positions of power and in leadership. So going directly to your question, as young people, it's very, very unfortunate that youth are struggling to go to school and to raise the resources to study. And immediately after they come out of the universities, they lack opportunities to survive. When you're coming here today, everyone is complaining that we are under a high taxation, which is the truth. The taxes that we are paying as citizens of this country, if you compare them with countries that are similar in the modes of taxation, like France, France is receiving a very good educational system. Their healthcare is superb. Their pension plan is superb. Their security systems are superb. But when you come here in Kenya, the first thing you're welcomed with is no streetlights in our roads, no employment for the young people. Our healthcare is not even as perfect as possible. So our country needs to be, first of all, the government need to account for the resources of the Kenyans. And remember, we have a problem with this debt issue. We see the government taking debt illegally, whereby it's not even anchored in our constitution. For an example, the recent finance bill, the CS is taking domestic debt, but when you look at the reports that are there passed by the National Assembly, there's nowhere that is anchored that domestic debt. So we as Kenyans, we are trying to ask, this debt that the country is taking, which is not passed by the National Assembly, why should we pay as the young people? Because that is the reason why our economy is where it is at the moment.
Fair enough. Dr. I know you wanted to respond to something.
Yes. Actually, there are two things here.
Briefly.
One is there's something that Lena mentioned about patriarchy in our Middle East. I think that's something that we need to speak to very much directly. And we don't solve it, the effects of patriarchy, by including one or two women in a situation like even this panel. But the entrenching patriarchy has three important aspects that we really need to find a way as a nation to deal with. And that is even what is hampering the constitutional provisions that provide clearly, that both gender needs to be included. One, of course, is the idea of misogyny, a very misogynistic way that we look at women, which is misogyny is disrespect and disregard of women. Listen to our public conversations, even from our own leaders, actually. You'll be shocked how they look at women. Number two is the paternalistic tendencies. Everybody wants to determine what a woman sees, what he studies, where he goes, and all that. That even up to now, there are families where a 20, 25-year-old young woman cannot go out at a time like this one without, control. Then, of course, we have the worst one, objectification. Women are seen as objects. Even in situations like this, I've been to fora where people plan everything, and all of a sudden they say, oh, we have no woman here. So a woman is brought in as an object.
Tokenism.
Tokenism.
We've also seen that even on political podiums.
Exactly. The weaponizing of sexuality in our political fora, I'm sure you have heard that. That is something that we need to deal with. While the situation seems to be slightly better in urban Kenya, in our countryside, we are where we were in the 1970s. Believe you me. I know a case of a lady who ran for a post of an MCA. And in the polling station where she voted, just next to her home, she only got 2 votes. One is hers, and the other one probably could be mine, which means that even the husband, the mother-in-law, and everybody else did not vote for her.
Probably could be a you vote for her.
Yeah. So that is the problem that we are dealing with. That's my point number 1. Number 2 is I wanted to weigh in on this issue why governments fear young people. I teach a course to my master's student on the history of revolutions. Actually, the title of the course is Revolutions in World History. And believe me, if you look at the situation in Africa mainly, or even take the example of East Africa, you see the phobia of our political leadership to young people. For me, it is absolutely understandable. In Tanzania, Mama Suluhu said, whip them, whip them. In Uganda, the political patriarch of East Africa says he puts them in the fridge. He said that last time. I'm not putting words to his mouth. Here in Kenya, we shoot them in the foot. I'm sure I'm not also putting any words to anybody's mouth, that we have had it.
Yeah, true.
The reality is that the conditions in many African countries are conditions that are very attractive to revolutions. One is a youthful population. 60% of the African population actually is youth, including here at home. Youth were conscious because of the globalization influence and the media, very open. Now KTN doesn't have an exclusive, preserve of breaking news. In fact, sometimes I could be probably more informed from social media than the news that we receive from many channels, not just KTN. Such a kind of youthful population with rising political consciousness and a global media that is not very easily controlled by the dictators we have around the world. Economic hardship is another one. This has led to revolutions, including unemployment, issues of inequality that we talk about here. And finally, of course, there is perceived political exclusion, which we have a lot here. If you look at the major revolutions in the world, let's begin with the American Revolution, what they call the American War of Independence.
Okay, briefly, kindly.
Look at the people who brought it forth.
The young people.
They were young people. In fact, I was getting information here. Alexander Hamilton was only 20 when he joined the Continental Army that drove the American Revolution. The guy who supported them, General Valle, the French guy, he was only 19 when he volunteered to support the American War of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was just 33 years old. James Madison was in his mid-20s.
Okay.
You go to China, you get the same thing. So the phobia that we have towards young people is actually justified. That's why I invite our political leaders, instead of whipping them, instead of putting them in the fridge, and instead of shooting them in the foot, let's just transform our society in ways that work for our young people. Create an environment where there will be employment. Create a free environment where our young people are able to actually use their talent and creativity to develop.
Okay. Pretty much, Dr. Ari. We're almost coming to the end of this conversation. Dr. Njoki, let me come back to you. We talk about debts, we talk about the economy, but there's a bigger issue in the room, and this is what some say is institutional corruption. And then how has that undermined economic dividends that the democratic governance sought to achieve here in the country? The issue of institutional corruption, because it remains a thorn in the flesh here in the country.
Yes, but who creates institutions? I think one of the things we must not isolate the regime and the leader at the top. Kenya is still a presidential democracy. So our institutions, of course, are largely also, as much as in 2010 when we created the new constitution, one of the things we tried to do was create independent institutions. And we also created institutions to audit. You remember, like we created, for instance, IPOA to audit the police. But look, what the police is a sham. In fact, we need to go back to that debate of, we thought by having an independent police, the police would start, for instance, respecting human rights or having a human rights police. But right now we are back to the policing of the 1990s and 80s with Nyayo torture chambers. I hope many people know underground Nyayo House, where we pick passports, are actually torture chambers, which, by the way, the state should open the question of memory. Because by refusing to open these sites of shame, so that we can see, and let's see the stories of people who are tortured today. I mean, not today, but 36 years and 40 years ago, But by refusing to create or to open those centers of shame, we refuse to then look at our history the way it should be looked at. Our shameful history. Places like Nyati House, where the police used to torture, special branch, a group of police like what we have right now, what we have with these Subaru people who move around with masks, and that is human rights policing of the Gestapo. It's policing of, if you look at this man, what was his name in Germany? Hitler. He had a police force that was behaving exactly like this, the Gestapo.
Okay.
No human rights. So going back to, and I'm using the institution of the police as a very good example. So translating a political culture that is democratic, that is based on fundamental human rights, from paper, what we have, because we have that on paper, on the 2010 Constitution, to a reality takes a lot of things. And it takes, I would say, 2 things, or 3, to create those institutions. Like, for instance, I hope in our lifetime, not even in our lifetime, soon we can see a human rights police.
Okay.
But it takes demand and supply. And one of the things is getting the right people in these spaces. And so if we have, for instance, a president who doesn't respect human rights, a president who will openly say, shoot people, shoot the legs. Like, people don't die of bleeding, like Rex Masai died because his leg was shot, right? So till we get a president who, at the core of his DNA, he believes in democracy, and not this mongrel thing that we're talking about of elections every 5 years. Like, he believes everybody first, going back to whether it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the African People's Human Rights Charter, that first, but everybody, first of all, is equal, and you have the right to life. Everybody has, those tenets of equality and liberty. If you don't believe in that, and that's why even when we are choosing presidents, or even, because a president doesn't rule alone, he's members of parliament. Look for people who really believe in the core of what they are. They believe in human rights. Because that person, of course, some change, like we've seen some people change, and we can't believe it. Like some of the people who we've seen change, the elites. But at the core of this person, from since they were even in university, From since they were Gen Z, like many of the generations, were they standing on the right side, or they were standing on the wrong side of history? Were they standing on human rights, or they were standing on which side? So those kind of people who have a track record of believing in the core tenets of our chapter 5, of our chapter 6 on integrity.
Okay.
That way, if you follow such people, even when they get to lead an institution, because institutions are led by women and men, they will not come in and say, if it's the police, let us shoot, or yeah, people should not protest, you know, because we are protecting the president or the regime. No. So let us follow and always look, does this person at the core of their being, what are their values? Do they believe in integrity? Do they believe in chapter 5 and chapter 6 of the Constitution? Because it's the only way you can have, unless somebody's values, is the values and character that shape then that institution.
Pretty much.
And we have seen the challenge. We have changed, for instance, the police even have an entire new uniform, new everything, new name, but they're still a force that doesn't respect human rights.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Probably, as we wind up this conversation, to Wakili Elena and Kaunda, we belong to the young generation, and that's why you talked about, you know, it being part of a process. We also talked about it. Then, if Saba Saba was chapter 1, you know, of all this, then what is chapter 2 that this generation must, you know, write? What do we need to do? Because it is a continuous process. Reform is a continuous process, like you rightly put it.
The second liberation was very political, and people fought it because they felt like they did not have political rights. And you see, if you do not have political rights, it becomes very hard for you to even participate in the development of the country. And at the end of the day, it affects the economy. The Constitution under Article 43 has clearly stated the economic and social rights. And these economic and social rights, they fall under what we call progressive realization, meaning that they cannot be achieved within one day, they cannot be achieved within 1 month, they cannot even be achieved within one regime. Now, I can tell you for a fact that when it comes to politics, we are all strategic supporters. At the end of the day, I'm asking myself, where do I feel my interest will be catered for? You probably as Standard will also ask yourselves, where do we feel our interest will be catered for? Every young person in this country is going to go as to where they feel their interests are going to be catered for, whether their political interest, whether their economic interest. While we, the young people, have become very awakened, because I believe for a fact that this constitution best suits the young generation. The constitution is so progressive, but it has become so hard for us to be able to implement it because our culture has not yet reached the point of that progressiveness.
Okay.
But when it comes to the young people, because of the kind of exposure that we have, because of the kind of education that we have, because of the kind of principles that we have, the values that we have, which have actually been enshrined under Article 10, we are the best people to actually ensure the implementation of the same goes on. But as we also try to ensure the implementation of the same is going to require us to make very hard decisions. And these decisions include unity of purpose. The reason why these people were able to achieve whatever it is that they achieved in 1990, irrespective of their political interests, irrespective of the interests that they had, they all came together and decided, you know what, let us fight for one thing. They did not achieve it in 1990, they achieved it in 1991. That's when the Section 2A was repealed, meaning that this thing is progressive. The American Revolution was not won immediately. It took years. The revolution, which other revolution? Was it the Britain or which one? Russia.
French.
Actually, yeah, the
Haitian.
French Revolution. It took time. There is nothing that is won immediately. Immediate gains are very deceiving. Immediate gains are very deceiving. And so as the young people, we need the unity of purpose. What I saw in June 2024, at the beginning of it, it was something that was very commendable, and it helped us
crash the finance bill. But now the next thing that we ought to have gone would be, we should have gone the way of issue-based politics and begin to ask ourselves, what is it that we want? If it's reforms within education sector, begin to call them out and begin to suggest the same. But if we all come out there and begin to say one term or two term, I actually believe that one term or two term is a slogan that is so equivalent to tribalism. It's just that the young people are not so tribalistic. So the issue of one term and two term is no different from tribalism, because we have seen people die from it. Just because you don't support the government, it doesn't mean that you are less patriotic. It's not like that. So I think we need to be united as young people, and we need to know what is it that we want, and how can we be able to achieve the same.
Yes. My take is, as young people, I think it's important for us to ask ourselves, what is the future that we want for our children and the children who are going to be the generation to come. And for me, I feel like as young people, we need to curate ways of surviving in this generation. Because remember, every generation had their own problem. And if we continue just complaining each and every day, a solution is not going to be met. For an example, Kenya has very literate young people, and I feel that the government needs to support young people in training them in various sectors like the artificial intelligence, the energy space, in various sectors, so that if countries want to export our human resource, they get it from us. And as I quote an example of a country like India, if you talk about data, if you talk about things of the skill set of cyber security, software engineering, they have that skill set. But when someone asks about Kenya, what is the first thing that other countries knows about our country? So for us as the young people, aside from taking the voters registration and voting for leaders, it is important for us to strategically place ourselves in places that we can grow our economy, because we are fighting for an economic liberation. So after fighting, what next? We need to strategically set ourselves in spaces, whether it's the health sector, whether it's the education sector, whether it's the agricultural sector. We benchmark, or rather check which countries are doing good in those areas. Okay. And we as the young people, we try and compare our notes. We go learn and then get back the skill set to our country, and we'll be able to make our economy to grow at the end of the day. So that is one thing that we as the young people should do. And we should stop this online thing that we vocally speak, but in terms of action, we are doing none. If we are 14 million of us, and we have already registered half of us, where's the rest of the half? We need to come out and support leaders, not only leaders out of handouts, but leaders who are ideological to our needs as a country, ideological to the needs of our parents, ideological to the needs of even our grandparents who are alive, not just supporting leaders out of tribal groups, or rather sloganeering politics, but leaders who have our interest at heart.
Fair enough. Dr. We're already out of time.
Yes. What the young people of this country need to be able to participate in the processes of transforming it is actually a hand up, not handouts. Mm-hmm. We have a leadership across the country which believes in giving handouts. Everywhere where you go in my village, they call it Yokosayara. Think about what they call it in your village. And the young people have come to be attuned of this. Number two, governments or states normally crush potential revolutions in two ways. One is to crush them physically, and also the second one is to co-opt. Have we seen something like that in this country? Elena mentioned that. A lot of co-option of young people. Now, you are not able to draw a distinction between the revolutionary Gen Zs we had in 2024 and the group that is now seems to be properly co-opted into the system. And finally, you know, besides demanding political freedom, okay, we need to begin to be serious to demand economic dignity, social inclusion, accountable governance, and equal opportunity. Let's add into our liberation story, freedom from unemployment, freedom from corruption, freedom from police excesses, and freedom from inequality. That is the message I will have for whether I'm talking to my students or I'm talking to my own children. That is the message I have. What they need now are not handouts. Okay. They need a hand up, somebody to pull them from the quagmire of unemployment that we have into a state where they use their creativity for the development of this country.
Pretty much. Just to be fair to Dr. 1 minute kindly.
Yes, just 1 minute to say it's very sad that Kenyan youth, and not just Kenyan youth, I think there's a generation of Kenyans, even Gen X's, millennials, and also now even the boomers. We have very progressive Kenyans politically, people who are politically conscious. You found the other day Kenyans are the people who spend most time on the internet, and it tells you something about them. It means they are very attuned to global ideas of politics, global ideas of political consciousness. They are demanding democracy, but not just in Kenya, but Kenya, of course, is the most progressive in the region, East Africa, but they are ruled by leaders who are still thinking in 1960, 1950, sadly, kind of consciousness. Okay. And that needs to change. Kenyans deserve better.
Pretty much. Of course, that was the conversation here on KT Prime. Thank you very much, Dr. Omai, Wakili Mati, Mr. Fred, and also Dr. Yombogi for joining us this particular evening. And to you, very many thanks for, of course, staying with us up to this particular moment in time. Until next time, do have yourself a wonderful night. And in case, of course, you're not sleeping, for viewers who are across the globe, do enjoy the rest of our programming. Have a good night again, and like always, God bless.